The Pondoff's Anonymous podcast network is sponsored by McKelvey Insurance Group. If you've ever felt confused or overwhelmed by insurance, McKelvey Insurance Group keeps it simple. They're an independent agency, which means they compare options from multiple providers to find coverage that actually fits you, not just one provider's policy. There's no pressure and no jargon, just honest guidance and real help. Call Evan McKelvey at 618-623-0080 or reach out to us at Pondoff's Anonymous and we'd be happy to connect the dots. They will save you money and they'll save it for you in less than 24 hours. Call Evan. This episode of Needed to Hear That is brought to you by Light Source. What do we need when we're in the dark? Sometimes it's simply just a light source. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good. I think I'm doing pretty good. We record this, I think we've said this a couple times, after I record a PA. And not that all of them aren't this way, but the girl we just had on has
the woman. Yeah.
Sorry. She's 28 and so much trauma. Like check all the boxes of trauma. Been beaten up, left for dead, is the victim of domestic violence, 2 sexual assaults, gnarly fentanyl addiction, Xanax addiction, all of it. Is now almost 8 years clean and sober. She's only 28. And her story, I told her at the end, that's why I do this. It's such a gift and a privilege. And then to be able to add this show has been so life-giving. On maybe Monday mornings, it's like, I got a long day ahead of me. I got a civilian job out there and then come and do back-to-back recordings. But then when I get here and I sit in this chair, that's when the script flips. I'm like, yeah, this is a blessing. This is a fucking privilege. I get to sit here and be a steward of a conversation of absolute hope amongst 10 times she could have given into hopelessness and nobody would have batted an eye. But yeah, I would have too a long time ago, and she never did. Sure. And then to get here and bullshit with you, and especially on the heels of what we did Saturday together.
Sure. Wasn't that, you have to tell me if I'm misquoting this, but wasn't that like the word that everybody stuck to the top of the smiley face chart at the event that you had on Saturday was hope? Wasn't
hopeful.
Everybody hopeful? Yeah, everybody was referencing hope as their key.
Moms that have stared down, loss of children, addicted children, recovered children that are relapsing. I mean, that's who the room was. One dad showed up.
Yeah. Which I was bummed out when I only saw one dad, and then you told me that it was mostly marketed as a mom's day. Because at first I was like, oh man, this is not looking good. Right. This is an L for the guys again. No, in our defense, it was definitely marketed as a mom's event, and this dad courageously said, I came with his wife, who they were both, you could just tell deep in it. I don't know their story too deeply, but everybody kind of shared for a moment around the room, and there was you could tell that there's some deep hurt. Glad he was there. Always welcome. Even one of our friends who's recently lost her son, Nick, who now has a small group called Nick's Beautiful Angels. I'm always saying it's a mom's group, and she came up, she's like, Chris, just so you know, anybody can come to this group. I'm like, oh, okay. Got it. Let me change that up a little bit. But it's hard not to I get lost in it because so many of them have found underground as a space, and which is why we did this roundtable. And the whole goal, and I had to keep reminding myself this as the day got near, the more and more not only scared, but the deeper the imposter syndrome got. And what am I doing hosting this? Sure. which is fair because I'm not qualified, but I had to remind myself, your job's to offer space. Rely on the faith stuff. You've invited Chaz and Ann, some clinical experts to which I know you well enough that if the train really got off the tracks, you do something to help me get it back on it. But
well, yeah, I mean, you're correct in the assessment that it's not your room, right? Like if you would have had like a presentation prepared on how to tell mothers how to cope,
right?
That would be misguided.
Sure.
It wouldn't be the most egregious misguided decision that I've seen, but it would be up there. But you're correct. You have
even if
the
I
space.
Can clock it.
Yeah, you have the space. That's the primary thing, is that's a room that you can open up and you can open the doors to and create that space. And if we have those kinds of spaces, I think we're mostly obligated to create them. I like you saying that, hey, anybody can come to this group. You don't run a particularly successful group by spending all your time thinking of who can't come.
Sure.
You're always thinking about who could come in, share this space, get a little bit of a boost of not feeling like they're on their own and not feeling hopeless. Hope is a tough one because, like we've talked about post-traumatic growth on here, right? You don't tell someone that they should be growing from their trauma, but if somebody does just so happen to have some outpouring of growth because of some kind of traumatic experience, it's a wonderful thing. It's the same thing with hope, right? Like you don't want to tell anybody, well, you just got to have hope, because telling somebody you got to have hope is the equivalent of, this too shall pass, right? Like the hopelessness is a really big concern, because that usually is the moment that somebody thinks that this is how things will always be. Hopelessness is a concern in the mental health world, because
Sure.
if somebody feels like how they're feeling right now is how they're always going to feel, that is worrisome.
Yeah. I mean, I think of it gives me the fucking EBGBs, man.
For sure.
And to think that you have to, because I've heard this from people that depression have to remind themselves this is temporary, because they have gotten out of it. But to me in the Jesus guy, I don't know if I believe in I don't believe in like the fiery hell that's in the movies and
Sure.
shit. But a state of hopelessness, a permanent state of hopelessness and isolation, to me is what hell would be like.
Sure. Well, in Buddhism, we have the realms of existence. You have what's called the wheel of life, and the realms of existence are, I think I've mentioned them on here before, but you have the God realm, the demigod realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the realm of hungry ghosts, and then you have cold hell and hot hell.
Oh, wow.
And your hot hell is whenever you are having these feelings of like overwhelm and maybe even rage and aggression and destruction. And then your cold hell is when you are feeling left, you are abandoned, you are not feeling. It's the absence of presence, it's the absence of connection and compassion. Why we bring up the wheel of life in Buddhism is we use the wheel of life as a meditation tool. You look and reflect on your day. You're in each of these realms every day throughout the day. And it's all the wheel of life. If you look at a picture of an image of it, it's all held by kind of like the god of death. He's not necessarily that, but that's kind of like a good reference point for one of his roles. So it's like a reminder that the wheel is spinning and it's all being held by the fact that this ends at some point. And so, when you reflect on when you're in these spaces, one of them might be like looking at, gosh, I had some time today where I was in a real cold space. I was in a real hot space. I had some time today where I maybe engaged in some repetitive and kind of self-destructive behavior to not be in a hell space.
Sure.
And so difficulties with hope are those are moments of cold, you know.
Yeah.
There's an iciness to, I guess this is it. You know, it's the Nicholson movie, right? As Good as It Gets, right? It's that the brilliance in that title is kind of the play on that term. You know, in one breath, as good as it gets is when you're leaning back and it's a day off work and you're with your loved one and you're like, man, this is as good as it gets. And on the other hand, it is when you're having a really, really hard time and you're like, damn, I guess this is as good as it gets. And that let's say negative version of that is the difficulty with hope that can find anybody. I mean, that's the part of what you and I do here in these conversations is have dialogues about like the experience of being human, right? Like most of what we do here, we're not trying to be like, well, this is for mental health and this is for addiction and this is for spirituality and this is for recovery and this. No, I mean, this is for humanity. Yeah. We don't, you know, like there isn't anything that is talked about on PA that most humans aren't eligible for, right? None of us want to walk around saying, well, I would never struggle with addiction. None of us can say that, right? You got to be you know, that's a little bit of hubris, but
God, that's just funny. Like I wish,
but here it's the same. You and I mostly talk about being human and hopelessness can be tough, right? I mean, whether it be the doldrums of depression or whether it be kind of looking at the calendar and realizing, well, I don't know that I can't retire from this job for 24 more years. You know, like, you know, these are time frames that really start to really hit. I know right now with it being April, right? Like anybody that I know in the world of education can tell me to the second how much longer they have to do this.
Yep. They got their pool bags getting ready to start getting packed. God bless them.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know, my good buddy Brett Baltz's wife is a teacher.
Oh my gosh.
Hopefully she's working summers.
I've only heard how incredible she is at her job. I mean,
and absolute
from a handful of people that just like that I know, you know, shared acquaintances that love to talk about how she's just like the archetype, the kind of Mount Rushmore of who you want taking care of your kiddo because she just cares so much.
Was Brett one of the ones that told you that, or?
Sure.
Yeah. God bless you.
I haven't had a chance to ask him.
Right.
But if I did, I'm sure it's what he'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to get him to donate some chairs to this office. Don't you think? Oh, it's another.
Oh.
Anyway.
Or we'll pay him for the business.
Sure. We love him. Yeah. One thing I was going to ask you as you're talking about the circle of life is, and maybe it changes, or maybe you're not supposed to rank them, but to me, like the cold hell sounds like the worst. I don't know if that's because the way you described it, you know, whether there's something about like being in a fit of rage or anger, like it's feeling something, but that emptiness of being abandoned or that hopelessness or that isolation off, like, I don't know. And maybe that's just my personality or experience, but that's the one would be the hell on earth for me.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's part of why Gabor Mate uses the realm of hungry ghosts as a metaphor for addiction is because the thought is that you stay cycling into the realm of hungry ghosts so that you don't enter your own hell. And so, you know, like, for example, you just described, like, if you were in the throes, if you were in active addiction, the thing you would probably be trying to not feel would be loneliness, isolation, the absence of presence, right? Like that some kind of loss, right? Like some kind of absence, you know, in the example of cold and hot, right? The absence of warmth, right? And then in hot, right, it is the absence of something that is kind of more chilled, more slowed, you know. And so everybody has their own kind of personal hell. It's not meant to be as things in Buddhism, for example, are predominantly seen this way. It's not meant to be like a terrible punitive concept. It is that you're actively trying to stay out of the realm that holds your most intense suffering.
Got it.
You know, like, and we all have our own version of that, you know, and where compassion for one another really comes in is for any individual you may talk to, their personal hell might be somebody else's good time. You know, and so that's why we have to be compassionate.
Introverts.
You know? Yeah, it's why we have to be understanding with one another, is because that's what can happen is we expect people to engage in certain things that might be their 10 out of 10.
You give Ashley a good book and a glass of wine, but she might not like or might not hate the isolation.
And she knows you won't go there. So there's
go.
A break. There's a built-in break there.
The thing about being and kind of knowing, you know, to use a term from our esteemed wrestling hero, The Rock, knowing my role was to provide space, and knowing you were there and Ashley was there, and knowing the moms that were coming, that it would at the very least lead to community that we wanted to provide, that could yield hopefully some hope. Like they most of them left feeling hopeful. But what I wanted to talk about tonight, and because I'm still processing it as a parent, because I gave you a lot to prep on, right?
Oh my God.
When I asked you to come speak, and I said, you'll do it at this time, and these will be the keynote TT topics. Your experience with teenagers whether you were a therapist or not, you've been good at this your whole life. You were good at it for me when you were pouring out my Rumpelmans when I was 14. But as a clinician, your experience with with the teenagers was really important that room to hear, but it definitely stole the show. And I want to talk about some of the things you talked about, because for parents out there, even kids that are not teenagers yet,
sure.
or that have been, or even people, because there were times that I was going back and forth as I was listening to you talk about the times that I was like, oh shit. Yeah, that time me and, I'm going to make myself the victim here. That time that Megan or Jen were bad to me and mean to me in high school and we broke up, it was the end of my world.
Sure.
And you talked, neither one of them listened to this, but I hope.
I wish they would.
They might, actually. I might get a couple texts, tell the whole story.
Sure.
Which, they can do their own podcast and make me the bad guy.
And we know you're being misrepresentative.
Right.
So it's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point is man, I know the feeling like when your world ends as a teenager, and I love Tommy. Tell me, there's basically, and more of I won't say it because I know you don't like this kind of talk on the podcast, so I won't use his more grotesque term, but more fish in the sea.
Sure.
Get over it. You're going to find more women one day. It's not particularly helpful when you're going through it as a teenager. And you talked about that. So as a parent, when Charlie's going through something in his 12-year-old self, that I want to tell him, like, man, you because I want him to be able to see a couple plays down the field. They're not able to. You're not able to. That's your world. And you explained that so well. So I was hoping you could share it on this episode, and then I can kind of bounce some things off you that were going through my head on that. Well,
I have, the same disclaimer that I had said before, right? Like I am not a parent. I am not pretending to know how to parent. And if anything that I say, if anybody who is a parent is like, well, that wouldn't work, or that doesn't work, or what, that's okay. That wouldn't work and that doesn't work. Like that's all right. Take what you want, leave the rest. And even a relative of mine one time told me that he stormed out of a family therapy session one time because he found out the therapist didn't have kids, and he's like, you couldn't teach me nothing then. Which part of what I would say that is like your therapist ain't going to teach you anything anyways. You're going to teach you, and the therapist is going to sit there with you while you're writing your own lesson plans.
Sorry to Megan and Danny about the marriage class. Well, to Megan.
Well, yeah,
the marriage class.
Megan's good. She's a good therapist too.
Yeah, I want that playback.
Yeah, she's pretty good at what she does. But after that kind of disclaimer, where I have a little bit of experience is I have worked with kids, teens, and young adults as a therapist for 20 years, and I will, as you hear me talk about it, you will always hear me kind of group in young adults, right? Like, because a lot of times, like if you have a kid, let's say, who has support, we've mentioned on here, like the single safe adult. But if you have a kid who's maybe 15 or 16 and they trust somebody, a coach or a teacher or somebody in the community or a youth pastor or a therapist, best case scenario, they're still going to trust that person or be talking to that person when they're 21 or 22. There's a bit of a continuum of how we think about this stuff. So anything I mention, I will make probably these caveats of like 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old, 23, 24-year-old, right? Because we are just kind of drinking from an emotional fire hose through that entire time. And when we turn towards adults, right? If you have a 15-year-old, the example we might use, you have a 15-year-old who goes through a breakup, and they were in a relationship for 3 months, and they go through this breakup and they are wrecked. The world, our culture, has a tendency to be incredibly dismissive of this. And you've got to remember one thing. If a 15-year-old kid, if anybody, but we're using a 15-year-old in this example, if a 15-year-old kid is having an incredible amount of pain and suffering from something like a breakup, and then everybody in their life tells them that is not worthy of that much pain and suffering, that it's just not that important, that it's insignificant. What you're going to have is you're going to have a 15-year-old who's having the internal experience that there must be something incredibly wrong with them then, right? Because they're already feeling it, right?
Yeah.
Good, if somebody says that they're mad and you say, don't be, you're not really getting anywhere, right? That's not great feedback, but you're an adult. So if you say you're mad and somebody says, don't be mad, you have enough sense of self to be like, dude, don't tell me what to feel. I'm already mad. But when we're kids and we have these big feelings and somebody says, for what? He or she wasn't that important. You've only been together 90 days. You're going to meet somebody else. There's plenty of other options. You weren't going to marry her. You get all this feedback that is just like telling you that there's no way this is important. Yet you are feeling it as maybe the most important feeling you've ever had, right? You don't think this is going to stop.
You mentioned that even like relationally, the loss for a teenager in what would be a relationship, whether it's with a boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever. And it hit me because you're like, even teenagers that have been through serious, significant loss, parents, siblings that have lost. This is also, and what I took is like, it's not just a loss. It could also be for the person that's maybe not wanting the relationship to end is now also being rejected. And there's other, in our world or in the 15-year-old world at that time, other context issues that make it even like it is the end of the world. Yeah.
It's going to be experienced internally. Something like, think of some very normal adolescent, and early, mid, and late adolescent, even early adulthood commonalities. So breakups, friend group disillusion, right? Losing a best friend, having an argument with a best friend, changes in schools, changes in places, even changes in like whether or not you're going to see somebody moving, like those kinds of things. All of those things are happening in a time in our life where our primary sense of self is social, right? Like who we are to our peers is our primary sense of feeling like we exist. So when something happens in that context, like a breakup, right? It hits all of those things, right? It's your entire friend group is aware of that. Other people who you may not even know are aware of that. Here's where you and I have to admit our age. Social media makes this a million times harder, right? Like if you were 16 years old and you were in high school and something happened to you, and somebody at you went to Belleville East, right? If somebody at Belleville West knew that, and they were going around Belleville West saying like, oh, I know this idiot at Belleville East who just got dumped by this girl, that wouldn't really matter to you. You wouldn't hear it. But that kid makes a TikTok about that.
Oh, fuck.
And then you get sent to it. You get sent to you, right? Somebody sends it to you at 8:00 at night. So now it's relentless, right? Like now your greatest fear is realized, which is that this is becoming who you are, because socially is how you're getting your sense of who you are. God. Right. And we never really lose that, right? Like we need the eyes of others to get a sense of who we are, right? Like we always need that to some degree, but of course we get better at understanding it for ourselves, right? Like I don't need people to tell me every day who I am right now. I have a sense of who I am that is 44 years in the making.
When I was in 8th grade, Megan was a freshman, and she wouldn't acknowledge that we were together because she didn't want anybody to know that she was hooking up with an 8th grader.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's huge, that kind of thing.
I'm the victim here, Chaz.
You're not. But that is one of those, you'll hear people talk about, we all remember, it's so weird. I don't know what like Men in Black memory eraser people have in adulthood, where they forget about how wild it felt emotionally to be a kid and a teenager. Like it's nuts the way that we suddenly act like these things are insignificant, as if they weren't ruling our every heartbeat when we were that same age.
Of the day.
And some of this is very obvious, because some of it is just like, I am giving examples here as a therapist that works with adolescents and works with young adults. And maybe the people that would think the most about this would be people that have kids in their lives, whether it be parents or aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever would be listening. And immediately you're thinking like, well, some of this is because you don't want to see your kids suffer, right? Like, your kid shows up with a broken heart. Mm-hmm. And all you want is for that to stop, right? Like, please, I don't want your heart broken.
Memory stick, right?
Yeah,
like, what a
and so
invention that would be.
Yeah, so that's part of it. Is like, I am well aware that the attitude of don't worry, this isn't a big deal, and you're going to be okay. Some of that is just like, you might be a parent who is watching your 13-year-old be really severely hurt for the first time, and all you're thinking is like, please let this stop. Like, please let this kid be back to the kid that I know, back to the kid that's kicking his IKEA table, playing video games, and not the kid that's going, what if nobody likes me anymore? And so, of course, a lot of it is, it's the same thing we talk about with grief, right? Most people's bad responses, air quotes, bad responses, are because of their discomfort with somebody else's suffering, not because they don't like care.
Sure.
There's not like a baseline callousness that is running through humanity or anything.
Even the people that, I was talking about this on the last episode, that say, oh, well, everything happens for a reason. Like, they usually mean that out of, they're trying to comfort you. It's a big swing and miss. When somebody says that to somebody who's just lost a child, or even goes through, this is not, thank you, but no thank you. But to your point, it's generally out of concern. Like when you're talking about this stuff, and I do it, I think I said, because I don't want Charlie to hurt. I hate it when he's disappointed, let alone heartbroken. It really like guts me, and I know that. So that it's not out of callousness, or maybe sometimes I minimize it, but the real important connection you were making as you were telling these stories is, and this has been a theme. This is a theme. This is your very, I don't know if you had to, sum up or even use your career with people in one word,
the word I hear you say a lot is serious.
Sure.
Here, you want the majority of this presentation here. It is you take it very serious because it is talking about human beings, which is very serious to you. And the theme of what you spoke about to the moms was that it's very important in your position that you will tell the adolescents how you take them very serious.
Yeah, there's a process where if we're consistently sending messages to kids mostly on accident or culturally, that their experience doesn't matter, right? That it's not really that significant, or that it's always in the service of some bigger goal, right? Like, like we tell kids, you got to get good grades to go to college, right? Like, well, that's true, right? I mean, if you want to go to college, get good grades. The kid knows that. Your fifth grader knows what grades are, so you don't. But we talk about these larger goals, right? We start contextualizing everything as if we are coming down from the mountain with 2 stone tablets every day. And that isn't a great way to teach someone that their experience matters.
Sure.
Right? That is a great way to teach someone that you hold the knowledge necessary for them to get anywhere. So when you're a kid, you don't really care if an adult has the way to get you to the next phase of your life, right?
Get your heart broken is good to make your skin thicker.
You don't worry. Someday, 13 years from now, you will be married to someone and be purchasing a home, and it's all going to be okay. Is just like, okay,
twice my life.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I am in a world where a freshman won't admit they're dating me because I'm in the 8th grade, and you would like me to think about 14 years.
I'm
down
42
the road.
years old. I'm still pissed off.
Yeah, it's just socially, it's just not how we operate. And so there's this idea of, like, really, if you have just like young people in your life, the opportunity to let them know that their experience matters, right? That we can take this serious. There's this kind of concern that if we, this is like a philosophical statement, right? If everything is serious, then nothing is serious, right? Like,
sure.
But the issue isn't that if everything is serious, nothing is serious. The issue is if you expect another person to determine what is serious for someone else, you're already gone. Right. You've already missed it, right? So it's like, I am not saying that like every little thing, every granular experience must be taken seriously. But I'm saying that we need inner mechanisms so that we allow ourselves to determine when something is serious for us as individuals. We learn that as kids, as adolescents, as young adults, right? Like we learn those things in our youth, that like, this really matters to me. Right? If the adults in our life, if the only thing that they're able to do is tell us that it shouldn't, and let me tell you what should, right? Well, you're just going to get kind of boxed out. God.
And that doesn't sound like anything anybody wants to buy, especially a teenager.
Yeah, you're going to get boxed
out. Or a preteen. Like, yeah, okay, adult, thanks for, because you said it, I'll buy into that.
And we forget too, like as adults, we have this moment where it's like, do you not remember when you were 16, what you thought of a 26-year-old person? that they were ancient, that their life was on the back nine. and we just kind of forget that. One of my favorite things about being a therapist for young people is you're not going to be particularly impressive, right? Like no matter what, I am always a heartbeat away from just being an old bald guy.
A boomer.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and so the other thing is
don't play video games with Charlie.
No, they'll call me Unk and I won't be able to handle it.
They're savages, man.
Mm-hmm. Anybody listening to this over the age of 30, you would not survive as an online gamer. No. Children are 1,000 times tougher than any of us in every facet.
And they're really good at their insults and jokes.
Oh, they're funny. It's terrible when they're funny. And it's just like, I know that the first time that I got a direct message on PlayStation from I was playing a game called Overwatch, which I played for years and years.
You're having fun, right?
I'm having fun, and I was playing in a role that is a tank. And I get a message from what I assume is a child that just says, "Learn how to tank, trash." I've never recovered.
Incredible.
Just like, and then here's the worst part about it.
The name of the podcast episode.
The kid was right. I just really did not position well. I played Zarya. I was not super familiar with Zarya. I stayed back a little bit too much when I should have kind of pushed onto the point, and I just did not play well. I did not play well.
Trash, man.
His profile picture was another character from the game called Junkrat, so I'm assuming he was my Junkrat who did carry that game. So I owe them. Could be
sure.
Doesn't
right.
I mean, it could be anybody. An apology, but that is.
You just couldn't tank.
I could not that day. It was not good. I usually play as a healer.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I'm usually support, so I just keep everybody going. It's the only thing I've ever been good at.
Got you.
It's the only thing I've ever been good at. But I mean, back in with kind of like the discussion of kids. Whenever I meet with somebody, it is my responsibility to be authentic. And there isn't anybody with a better kind of intuitive read for authenticity than a young person.
So they can sniff it out pretty quickly, man.
And so if you want to be fake, or you want to preach, or you want to make a conversation about you with a kid, they're going to clock that in no time, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Like, you're done. And I mean, dare I say, for the most part, maybe you should be, right? Like, I mean, if the first thing that you think of in response to somebody else saying that something is important to them is to have a conversation with them about why it's not, I don't know what you're there for anyways, right? Like, if you know, and again, this does not include, like, if you are a parent and sometimes you are short or not having it, or have had a bad day, like, that will happen. You're with this person every day. But, you know, as a therapist, I think that one of the things that I am the most proud of, just as a person, is that in my adulthood, in my time as a therapist, I feel a very authentic sense of being non-judgmental. I have a lot of confidence that when somebody tells me something, it is not going to change how I view them, and that I'm very lucky that is something I can convey authentically, because it is true. You know, like, I know that, like, I'm very proud of that part of what it's like to be me. But the authenticity piece is, like, don't try to be fake, or don't try to be the boss with somebody who is actively figuring life out. Because even if you have done a pretty good job of figuring your life out, that doesn't matter to this young person that you're talking to.
Give a flying,
yeah, you know,
if you're not doing 360, 720 East Bay dunks on YouTube, they ain't impressed.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's like every now and then I will meet somebody who is like a really, really sweet kid who will already be like, I kind of want to do what you do.
Oh, wow.
When I grow up. And it's like, think about that moment, right? Because I am a therapist. So if a kid is saying, I think someday I'd like to be a therapist, think about how amazing of an opportunity it is for me to be like, oh my gosh, man, you should.
Because they make so much money, right?
You should. Yeah.
Right.
You've been 20 years in, livable wage. But I do think, like, gosh,
gonna get this kid a new guidance counselor.
That's amazing, right? I remember my guidance counselor just saying, I had some college brochures, and he just said, "You're thinking about going to college?"
Oh, it's like my buddy.
I was.
My old man's best friend, Terry Carrera, God bless TC, used to say, Tommy, you know anything kept me from college was? Tommy would say, what's that? He goes, high school.
High school.
One thing you said on Saturday was that that we often call these adolescent teenage years the rebellious years, and you kind of poke some holes in that, and in the context of the conversation, we were a lot of parents and moms in this room are a good healthy portion of them are really, their kids are going through it, struggling. These kids are, some of them are turning to self-medicating and drugs and alcohol, and want to hear what's, and it's to no parent's fault necessarily, or nobody's there to say where did I miss, but it was really helpful to hear from a clinician that works with them in. And before we get to the rebellious part, you also said this, and you're not shy to share this with the parents, that your job isn't to run and tell, to show and to run and
right.
tell.
Right.
So you're a trusted person that isn't mom or dad, that can give anybody some feedback on what their experience is like at that young, vulnerable age. So talk a little bit on your boundaries and why they're so important. And then and the kind of myth, if you will, that this is a rebellious stage.
Well, you have very little control
Bingo.
as a young person. And as far as large decisions go, we shouldn't, right? We want to be insulating young people from big, massive life decisions, right? We don't want people to grow up too fast, or the one thing that we think about developmentally is you don't get to skip a grade developmentally, right? Like if you never got to be 15, you're going to be 15 at some point.
Sure.
If you never got to be 12,
even the whiz
you were
kids,
parentified, you're going to have to be 12 at some point, and that's important. That is important. You don't get to skip a grade, and you shouldn't have to. You should get to be 15 when you're 15, 16 when you're 16, and 17 when you're 17. But either way, we just don't have any control, right? Like, I mean, if you think about the wild lack of control that kids have, a very, what should be safe opportunity, and I'm not saying it always works perfect, but I take a lot of pride in it, is something like therapy, where out of the gate, I can share, and most people know, the limitations of confidentiality, right? Like there are certain things that no matter what, if a kid tells me something, I have to do something about it. There's certain things if an adult tells me something, I have to do something about it. Those are what we refer to as our limitations of confidentiality. Anything outside of those handful of things that we know to be suicide, homicide, child abuse, neglect, those kinds of things. It's not an exhaustive list. Those outside of those limitations of confidentiality, what somebody comes in and tells me in therapy is for the room and the room only. And I think that is very, very important, because it is an opportunity for a young person to have a little bit of control, right? If a 14-year-old person comes and talks to me about how they are really, really anxious and they are really, really worried that the people at school don't like them, and there are a couple of kids that have been telling them that they don't like them, I am not calling the school.
Right.
Anne said this as well when we were there on Saturday. She was talking about how even if something is serious, it becomes, can I help you talk to your parents about this? Can I get mom or dad or mom and dad in here and you tell them? Or do you want to get them in here and would you want me to tell them? Right? Like it's option after option. It's control after control in what we consider in therapy to be a safe container, right? It is boundaried by the room, and because, as I always say in here, like therapy, I view therapy as a rite of passage, right? You should have a safe place to talk about what it's like to be you to somebody who's not in your life every day. you know, and offering that kind of sacred space to a young person and letting them know that they have autonomy, they can talk about serious things in here, and letting them know that there are certain things that will be taken out of their hands because they deserve to be protected. Mm-hmm. Right? Which is what
they're
want.
Worth it.
Yeah. It's what we want developmentally for adolescents especially, right? You want a kid to be formulating a sense of themselves, right? To be getting an idea of who they are, to be getting a little bit of sense that they get some autonomy. I mean, for God's sake, we let them drive, you know? So giving them that sense of autonomy and still letting them know that they live in a world that won't let things get too out of control, right? That's the kind of support and the kind of safety that we want to provide. And I think that therapy is a really great space for that. I think that any kind of extracurriculars, any kind of sports clubs where, you know, it's facilitated by an adult, it is put together by a safe adult. They're going to get to communicate about difficult things. Maybe they can be trusting of the individual, and it's not just like another thing that gets treated like something for everybody else to handle. It still gets to be theirs, right? Like,
sure.
And I struggle with the term rebellion because I look at the era of adolescence, right? We love to use that language, right? Well, you know, kids are going to be rebellious. I just think we have a low bar for rebellion, you know, that I don't necessarily think that rebellious is a great term. It's especially not rebellious if everyone does it. That kind of takes the teeth out of rebellion.
Yeah, right. Sure.
That's if everything is serious, then nothing is serious, right? If everything is rebellion, then nothing is rebellion. But I do think that we have this low bar for rebellion that if we were able to treat it as this self-development, you know, like you're taking control in the areas that you're able to take control, right? Which might be a little bit of acting out, you know? But what we know in adolescence developmentally is if a kid acts out and nobody notices, that's the worst case scenario. Right? Like if you have a kid that, I mean, take more extreme behaviors than just like staying out past curfew, but like if you have a kid like sneaking out, right? If you've got a 15-year-old kid that's sneaking out and doing God knows what, worst case scenario, nobody notices when that kid's gone. Right. You know, if that kid's sneaking out and coming home every night and nobody knows that they're gone,
sneaking in and out of the window, you could just use the door.
Yeah, that we know is a form of feeling of abandonment that is right there with just struggling to think that you even exist. You know, but we want to look at these things when a kid is making autonomous decisions that we know are maybe not always the best. As I said, I'm not somebody that wants to go full into like the brain development dialogue. I'll put a little bit of a pin in that and circle back to it. But like we know that maybe like impulse is driving the bus, right? Like there's not an incredible amount of like process oriented.
As a 42-year-old, that stops at 43.
Yeah, any day now.
Good to know.
And so I do, you know, we know that there's just kind of like different impulses and emotional experiences kind of driving the bus, but it's very important to be able to look at certain things as the experimentation of adolescence is more also like the self-development of adolescence, right? Like trying to get a little bit of an identity, trying to feel like, okay, I'm making some calls here. Some of this is on me. You know, I said I put a pin in the brain development stuff. We think we know certain things about the brain, right? Like we should hopefully know that we don't know much. But one of the things that you'll hear a lot is that a person's brain isn't fully developed until 26, or, you know, that's kind of
convenient when you get off your parents' insurance.
Yeah. So we think about like the adolescent brain or a young person's brain as you know, just kind of being governed by different.
The female brain seems to get it quicker than the male.
Emotionally, wow, yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, if there was like some kind of chart for like how old emotionally is like a 10-year-old female versus like a 17-year-old man, you know, it's like, it's just kind of wild. The emotional skill set and the social skill set's a million times better. But there's a piece of this brain development discussion where I will hear adults tell a young person that part of the reason why they're having the experiences that they're having or they're making the decisions that they're making is because their brain is not developed fully. Why would you tell that to someone? Like, don't say that to a young person.
Me and Ashley are both right now like, oh, fuck.
Like, you know, because
maybe not her.
No, because it's okay to be like, hey, you have some feelings and some things going on right now that maybe you don't totally understand, because part of being a human is to have a lot of things going on that you don't always totally understand. And we need to remember that as being kind of more ubiquitous across the lifespan than just the idea of like a 12-year-old is so kind of unaware of the world at large. Right. Because there is truth to that. That's why we're protecting them. Right. Like, you know, that is why you don't. That's why like Charlie didn't like drop you off and drive home. Right. Because we just don't feel like developmentally that would be like a really great play. That's great. That's great. My grandpa took over the milk route at 13.
Sure.
That involved a truck. It was probably not great for him, even though he pulled it off.
Is this the uphill both ways speech?
Yeah, you know, and so
you frowned on.
I don't love that speech. I you know, as I've said on here before, you know, Socrates said kids these days don't respect anything. So there's that we know of about a 5,000 year history of saying, you know, this generation's the worst generation, you know, and it's fine. It's clearly not going to stop.
Right.
So I'm not gonna put pressure on people to stop. But I just think about like there is a way to approach the discussion of like the decision making process of a young person, right? Like, you know, just the like get me there, you know, walk me through how this played out. And some of that includes the fact that this person is actively developing, and we want to treat them like they're actively developing, right? Like you don't want to treat a 14-year-old person like they have the brain of a 27-year-old person, right? That makes sense. We don't do that as a society. But trying to tell young people that the primary problem they're having is because they are not as advanced as you is not really going to get you incredibly far unless you have the humility to say, the only reason I know what I know is because I slammed my forehead into the wall so many times at your age, right? Like there is something to speaking humbly to the experience of, man, I did a lot of this same stuff. So if you got any questions,
I'm here for you.
Let me know, you know.
That might be a good tactic I could use.
Yeah, it's just kind of, there's just so much to, you just think about these decisions, right? Like you get a driver's license at 16, you make logically a pretty serious life pivot at 18, right? What are you going to do after high school if you're able to graduate high school? Well, maybe. Is
that still 18?
21. So,
oh, really? Shit. That was always a rite of passage.
Don't smoke.
Don't vape either. I think that's
I don't think
drug.
vaping's good either. See how old we just got?
Yeah, but it's.
That's what that was. Like, I don't know about this vaping and some of the weed out there.
Rather go back to cigarettes.
Real strong, and I don't think you should be messing with cigarettes with all we know about lung cancer. And it's, man, like, I mean, this at that point, we might as well be, that conversation might as well be happening at 5:30 a.m. at a Hardee's.
Learn how to tank trash.
Yeah, like it's just such a missed opportunity when it's like, you know, and again, we've said on here before, right? You don't tell somebody who's addicted to drugs that they probably shouldn't do drugs.
Right.
You don't, if you catch a 12-year-old with a vape saying that's bad for you, is say it.
Sure, right.
Because, yeah, I mean, educate.
You need
that's probably not healthy. But you're probably not talking to someone who had no idea, right? Who had zero idea. 84% of the reason why they have a vape is because they know they shouldn't have a vape. You're trying to have control over something.
Sure.
You know, you're trying to have some choices and some autonomy, and you're taking that however you can.
Yeah.
At that age. I just think that we forget that to refer to things very flippantly as rebellious is rejecting. Right? It is an us versus them, right? Because who are they rebelling against? They're caregivers,
right?
Right? Well, I don't
rule makers.
Yeah, you know, like
controllers.
Yeah, that is true, right? It's an accurate representation that the world is trying to control a young person. That would fall under the umbrella of protection, right? Like, yeah, don't steal the car when you're 14, man. Like the world is going to interrupt that.
Yeah, sure.
And that would be a good idea. But you just said it. The worst case scenario is if you do something like that, nobody sees it. You know, like
pull it right back in the garage and
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of any social worker that's ever worked with kids will be able to tell you stories of little kids who run away and they like go behind like the air conditioner in the backyard to see if anybody gets really freaked out that they're gone. You know, that like you see that as a behavior. Like that is
oh God,
brilliant. Right? Like it's a brilliant play of like, it's so scary. Like the child's brain, let's say even young, right? I mean, we're talking a lot about adolescence and stuff, but like all the way through adolescence to be pretty self-centered and egocentric is developmentally appropriate, right? Like Jean Piaget, who was like a child development guy, Piaget even talked about like what he would refer to as
that French.
Yeah.
Sounds like
the naive idealism of adolescence, which we don't want to be negative about. And so like, if you think about a kid that says, I don't understand. We throw food out every day in this country, but there's people starving. Why don't we give them more food? Right? Like as old people, we're just like, oh gosh, the logistics of global aid is really terrible. And we just have some difficult relationships with some countries where starving is happening and to give them, and then there's dietary concerns. I mean, they don't eat this.
Bleeding heart liberals.
Yeah. It's like, shut up. Like, just a kid just had a really nice thought. Like, we got all this food. Why can't anybody have it? But that is developmentally appropriate, right? It is not to be browbeat out of them by the realities of global aid or cost. That's one of my other favorite things is a kid says, why don't we do this? Well, it costs too much. Well, a kid just had a great idea, right? A kid said, "What? Look at this wall. It looks terrible. Why don't we paint it? Why don't we paint the school?" Well, who's
going to pay for that?
Yeah, we don't have any money for that. Well, that's not a life lesson. You do want kids to understand things like the transactional aspects of the world they live in. That is important. But if the only time you teach that is some kind of like cut them off at the knees,
I'm thinking like a snuff out.
Yeah, it just doesn't help, right? Like at least take the time to be like, man, that's not your worst idea, but I think we're gonna. Step one is the idea, but after that, I think we're in trouble, man. We got a lot of game planning we got to do to get this whole building painted. So if you're still thinking about it tomorrow, let me know. We'll see what step two is. It's just so, I think just kind of like easy to be able to reflect back to a kid or a teen or a young adult, some things that you're seeing in them that show their expansion, right? That show like, gosh, that's a kind-hearted thought. We do it in some spaces really well with like really small kids.
Yeah.
You know, like we're pretty solid. Like I joked on Saturday, I always joke like everybody in the room was all parents, and I joke like you've all put terrible drawings on your refrigerator.
Act like it was a fucking Monet.
Seven lines from a red crayon yellowed on the refrigerator for 14 months, and that's a really beautiful thing. At some point in development, we go through early on, we go through what is essentially what disillusionment, or maybe a little bit of a narcissistic wound, meaning at 0 to 3, you maybe tell a kid that they hang the moon. At 4, you're just like, other people exist. and mom or dad don't have time for this right now. And that's a really tough transition.
Sure, I bet.
We've all been through it. We all got to the other side of it, but that's just kind of developmentally appropriate. When you hear a 6 or 7-year-old irrationally blaming themselves for things, that is, like a tragic example that is common is if you hear a little kid that worried that mom and dad are getting a divorce because of them. That's heartbreaking to hear, right? Like, I mean, you don't want to hear that, but it's also developmentally appropriate because a 6-year-old is thinking that they are causing an awful lot of things in the world, right? Like it's just developmentally appropriate. So you of course want to push back on that and say like, no, buddy, that doesn't have anything to do with it. But it is developmentally appropriate. It's not anything other than that. We are self-centered or egocentric for a significant amount of time because we have to build a self, right? Like we have to build our own experience of what it is like to be a person navigating this world, even into if you really skip ahead, even into our 30s. 20s for a lot of people are still a lot of striving. You might be trying to get married. You might be trying to have a family.
I thought I fucking knew everything.
Oh, for sure.
I was 20.
Yeah, I got a job as a therapist in a prison, I think before my 24th birthday. They should not.
You're talking about the ice rink, or
they should not have given me that
prison?
job. Yeah, I mean, they should not have given me that job.
You were running a juvenile delinquent.
Yeah, the rink is a great example. If you want to give like a good adolescent example to pivot to that a little bit, is so.
Better give some backstory to
the
what the rink
was.
is.
The ice rink in Fairview Heights was, I'll say, my first job. I'll keep it on the I for a minute. It's my first job. I got hired there when I was 16. I worked there until 6 months before I got my master's degree. So I worked there about, let's say, 7 years, 6.5, 7 years.
I worked for you.
Yeah, and I was full time from 18. I pretty much was full time from 18. And there's a handful of us that I'm still friends with.
And you would cover people.
I did a lot. I worked a lot of extra hours. A
couple extra ice makes here.
And I did a great job of refusing to learn how to drive that Zamboni for a really long time. Because the writing was on that wall.
The second you learned how to work
it was not going to be good. So
you'd get taken advantage of.
So worked there for a really long time, and I worked a lot of hours. I worked hard. It was something that I took really seriously. I learned how to sharpen skates, and I eventually took that really seriously. And I did what I thought eventually was a good job. Dwight Schofield really finished
the Barbarian.
really taught me how to do a good job of that.
He sure did.
And then I took it really seriously. And
he wanted those skates sharp.
Yeah, they were level. And that's it's a good example of young adulthood and adolescence, because if you would have talked to any of us, we would have told you 1,000 times over, this place is being poorly managed. This place is being poorly run. Nobody in charge gets it. Nobody cares. The owner is absentee. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if this place crumbles. We would have told you all that, and we would have told you that every day that you would listen. And the reality is, every one of us should have been fired every day. we would have done something fireable at least weekly.
Even me and Andrew.
Yes, stealing food, stealing
those cookies.
items,
remember, those cookies.
not doing it. Yeah, not only the cookies, taking cookies out of the freezer and baking them for yourself.
I like mine chewy. So
yeah, not even like, oh, it's 10 o'clock and nobody has bought these 8 cookies. Does anybody want some cookies? No, it's 9 o'clock. There are 6 cookies still for sale. You make 6 fresh ones. We should have all been relieved of our duties there a million times over. But that is an adolescent job. That is being 16, 17, 18,
I mean,
19.
I'm telling you, we could, if I had time, I would write the sitcom or screenplay for that.
Yeah, it is developmentally appropriate. We knew everything. We knew exactly how an ice rink should run. We knew exactly how it should be owned, of course. Right? Like, we knew exactly how it should be managed. We knew exactly what the finances should look like. We knew exactly how they should be making money. And we didn't know anything. And that is the beauty of adolescence, is you get to navigate the world with that kind of assurance that with a little bit more control you would be successful, and the world hopefully just kind of takes that in stride.
Yeah,
humbles
you a little bit.
Yeah, like maybe it's maybe some people do get fired, but it's egregious when they do. It had nothing to do with
he didn't want to shovel the snow,
cookies.
Chaz.
Like, the legend. I will forever respect him. I will tell the story. I will not say his name, but I wish I could, because I would love to just get an email from him saying, yeah, I would replace
He's not in prison.
the leveled, whatever the leveled ground of Fairview Ice Rink is now, I would replace with a statue of him. But we did have somebody one time who showed up for a shift about 90 minutes late in a pretty severe snowstorm that they should have just not had to come in, by the way. Like, we just should not have been working. And he came in about 90 minutes late, and one of our esteemed managers said that his penance for being late was that he was responsible for shoveling the sidewalks. I will say this as a 44-year-old, not as a 19-year-old working in an ice rink. It was a 25,000 square foot building. So you should be paying people to clear your sidewalks and your parking lot, if for no other reason than the safety of it.
And liability.
Yeah, but instead they asked a 17-year-old who was 90 minutes late to shovel off hundreds of feet of sidewalk. We did not notice that he was...
Again, this is the sneaking out.
Yeah. We didn't notice for a little while that he wasn't back in. So we were like, damn, we better go check. And we go outside, and this legend who...
14 inches.
This legend in the biggest part of the front of the sidewalk, covered in snow, right in front of the flag,
the American flag.
He shoveled "I quit" into the snow with his initials. And if that isn't the single most important adolescent story that I could tell you, I hope that he is Fortune 500 successful at this point.
Swatting supermodels away 10 at a time.
He shoveled "I quit" into the snow. Something that most of us will never get a chance to do that satisfying, is the ultimate adolescent story. I will say, and maybe it's a good enough reason to tie a bow on our conversation tonight. The way that I would tie it together is, you better believe if a 17-year-old person came into my office and told me the story of how they shoveled "I quit" into the snow after being told they had to shovel 450 feet of sidewalk, I would be so proud to be the therapist to say, damn, man, that's amazing. Like, that's amazing.
Will you sign this?
Thank you so much for telling me this story. You will remember this story the rest of your life. I also get to be the person that says, don't worry, your 2-day-a-week job at the ice rink was not going to be the absolute mountaintop of your employment career.
You will make ends meet.
It would be an honor to do that. And so,
Chazzy, you got me. What a story. True story.
He's a legend.
We got to find him.
Yeah. On PA next Monday.
Incredible, man. Oh, boy.
And I want an episode of PA that is not about his journey. It's 90 minutes of walk me through that day.
Different
walk
angles.
Me through every minute
each letter
of that day. I want to know it was legible. It was
when you were doing
perfect.
The cue. When did you decide that you were going to go uppercase first, Lord?
Were you worried we might see you? Were you concerned? Were you concerned that somebody might come out when you were mid you, and then it wasn't going to be as great? Because the other thing he did is he stuck the shovel in the snow, and the snow was deep enough to hold the shovel upright. So he also posted it
his
up.
Fucking flag.
Yeah, he also posted it up, and we had no idea how incredible he was until that day, and I will forever regret not being closer with him.
And he lives in infamy.
Yeah, I wish he was in my life.
Thanks for this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they say to tie a bow on it. I do think that the primary thing, and I don't think this is just like adolescents and young adults. I think it's something that we do to one another too much, which is like not necessarily giving somebody an opportunity to think that the story that they have from their day or their week really matters. And that is how people can kind of form a little bit of hopelessness is they start to think like this is how things are, and it seems like the world is indifferent to it. And we can't afford to do that to one another. The primary thing that we have to do is remind one another that I don't know what your day was like today, but I'm interested. And if you want to tell me about it, I'd love to hear it. And if you don't want to tell me about it, I at least want you to know I'm interested. That's my goal throughout my day in as many transactions as I can have in my life is to just sit with somebody, whether it be at work or whether it be at home or whether it be with friends or family, and just be like, man, if you had anything going on in the last couple of days and you got a story to tell, man, I am interested.
You're here for it.
Yeah. So hopefully somebody needed to hear that.
Amen, brother.